Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's episode of Presenting Our Presence. We're really honored today to have Josh Littlechild and Josh's mother, Patricia, join us in this conversation. My name is Florence Glanfield, and I am one of the co-hosts for Presenting Our Presence. I will invite my colleagues Michelle and Kyle to introduce themselves, and then we'll turn it over to Josh and Patricia to introduce themselves in a way that is most comfortable for them. Thank you, everyone. We look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Florence. Welcome, Josh. Welcome, Patricia, to this new and amazing pop episode today. We're really excited for this opportunity to speak with you both. My name is Michelle DeRocher. I'm from the Fishing Lake Métis Settlement. And here in the university, I work in the president's office as the executive operations coordinator. And I'm really happy to be with you all today. Kyle.
What an honor to join you both, Josh and Patricia, in this pop episode. Hello, Sazi Kalni Pursulier Tipachatina Hesley. I'm from Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, and just really looking forward to the familial and relational episode that we have today. So, must see.
Hi, I'm Josh Littlechild. I'm from Ermiskin Cree Nation. I work here at the university in the capacity of manager for the strategic plan for braiding out of the office of the Vice Provost of Indigenous Programming and Research. I'm really happy to be here to share I guess some stories and have a good session. Thank you.
Good morning, Mitakuyapi. He hako manawi makiapi. I'm Patricia, my English name Patricia, Goodwill Littlechild, and I'm from the Lakota and Dakota nations of United States and Canada. I hold tribal membership in Eagle Butte, South Dakota, and I also hold membership in Musqueam, Alberta, from where my husband is from, and so I'm a member of the Ermiskin Cree Nation, but I was raised on Standing Buffalo, Tatankanagi, Dakota First Nation, and Southern Saskatchewan. And then my ancestors are all from Sitting Bull's Camp in Wood Mountain, Saskatchewan.
So wonderful that you're both able to be here today. And I do understand that you two have prepared a way of working together for this conversation this morning, and we'd invite you to start that in whatever way makes sense for the two of you. In the stories of who you are, Josh and Patricia, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, in our way, it's good to tell our stories about where we come from, and I would like to talk about while we have my mom here, I'd like to share a bit about my Dakota lineage, my Lakota lineage. I'm Dakota Lakota lineage. And while my mom's here on campus, I thought it would be a good idea for my mom to set the record straight, so to speak, and tell it as it is, in a good way, about where I come from on my maternal side. And I'd like to share that with you as a part of our pop questions that we were preparing for today. So I'll give my mom the floor to explain where we come from. Thank you.
I'd grown up with unwritten rules of orality. So you have to validate where your stories come from in order to say, this person told me this. We're raised in a matriarch society in my Dakota reserve, and my mother, although my mother had all the Lakota stories, so did my father, because his mother was Lakota from Sitting Bull's Camp. So we were told stories nonstop, every morning, every noon, every night, because we had no television. That was our entertainment. We're told stories of the animals, the earth, creation, but most of all, who we are as Dakota and Lakota people. Now, that's big words for big tribes, but in the Lakota side, we're Ocheti Shakoi, which is the 7 council fires. And in those 7 council fires comes the Hunpapa, the people who camp at the beginning of the horn of the circle. So we were the ones, so our 7 council fires had order of camping. And that's where Josh comes from, the first ones that camp at the beginning of the circle. And there was like 100,000 of us. So pre-contact, so we had to have order. So you know where when you arrive, your band arrives, that's where you go and camp. On my Dakota side, in the Minnesota area, we lived in Minnesota, Nebraska. We wandered the area there, but remember, there was no American border. We always came up to Canada to hunt. It was the summer calving grounds of the buffalo in southern Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta. So we followed that great circle of life to Wyoming, New Mexico. The buffalo went around, so did our people. So on that side, I come from, Josh and I come from the Minikanju, the people of the waters. So that's Minnesota. So we validate our mother and dad. They had an English name, Alexander, and my mother's name was Stella, and her lineage comes from Black Moon, who we have ancestral knowledge to 1830, from 1830 on. And from mid 1800s, my grandpa named Love's War joined Black Moon's camp, who was Black Moon, the second or third, was already the commanding officer for Sitting Bull. So Sitting Bull called out the orders during the Battle of Little Bighorn before and after, and Black Moon was his war strategist and consultant. So in Mary's Love's War, he married Love's War, and that's where my great-grandmother comes from, Josh's great-grandmother. Her name was Emma Love's War, and she had a sister named Katrina. And so Katrina's married a man, my granduncle, that's name was, he killed two, Ohinupa. And my grandfather, great-grandfather, his name was Okuteshicha, hard to kill, the one that's hard to kill. And so they gave life to my grandfather, and his name was Wayunkapshni, don't kill him, Wayunkapshni. And then he married a woman by the last name Taweka, her little feather from the Dakota people, and they gave life to my mother, Stella. And so from there we go from the Wood Mountain Sitting Bull Lakota camp to the Standing Buffalo Tatankanaji camp, and they married back and forth. The others married Métis people that came west with the Northwest Mounted Police. They married Métis people in Willow Bunch, Saskatchewan. But we stayed married within the Dakota and Lakota people because there was pockets of us around. So from there, we fought in the Battle of Little Bighorn, and my grandpa, Black Moon, he was also in the battle of, as a young man, in Wounded Knee. So about 20, maybe going on 30 years ago, my mother used to get paid from United States on land lease money, but then they stopped paying her. So about 27 years ago, my sister took her back to South Dakota, to Aberdeen, to find out where our money was gone. And so my mother went in there into Cheyenne River, Eagle Butte, South Dakota, and here mother told them her history, that lineage is important. It validates where you come from. So Mom repeated that same history I'm telling you about from 1830 on, and they said, "Welcome home. We've been looking for you. You are the only family that did not register, come home to register." So we all got registration in the United States, including Joshua. But you see, we don't belong to the American government or America, United States. We have power within our own sovereign nation of Cheyenne River. Up here in Canada, we were never given treaty because the government kept pushing us. They didn't know when they made that line that we had free run, same as the Blackfeet, same as the Mohawk. They divide us with that line. We stuck in Canada. We never surrendered. So there's a book written about us. We never surrendered. And so this is this book of our history that I hand over to Josh. You read this every time you have a chance, because now to validate my history, I repeat it over and over to him to tell his children, and he can name me. He Hakaomane, we told me this story so he can validate to his children. And why do we do that? We say it over and over so it will not be embellished or forgotten. I could dare not embellish that story. Once you say one thing wrong about the story, you twist it forever. The story's twisted and altered forever. So we have to be truthful. And you hear Jody Wilson-Raybould spoke out against Trudeau, said we are oral people, so we have to be truthful. And that's so true. And everybody that wants to validate who they are has to do their research and talk to people that are still alive, or because there's primary resources and secondary. And my oral stories are primary because they came from the battle. I'm only the fourth generation from Battle of Little Bighorn. I'm only the fourth to fifth generation from Wounded Knee. And Josh is not even the seventh yet. His kids are the seventh generations. So our stories are fresh. The pain is raw. We fought in against the American government to keep our sovereignty, our identity. And you have to know that all the goodness that comes from knowing who you are. You know, it validates and authenticates you, your tribe, your nation, your history, your language, your culture, everything. It means everything. And so I'm very fortunate that my mother and dad told us those stories day and night. I contributed several books in my lifetime on our history. I argue because when a non-native person tells you who you are right away, it's already somebody else's source. It's not ours. So hang on to your stories, whoever's listening to us. Ask questions and hang on to them, because don't let anybody tell you any different. Because that's our history. That's oral history, the way it's supposed to be. Pilama yaye.
Oh, I thank you. And so I also have another side of me that's Cree. And my father, Marvin Littlechild, is a Cree man from Ermineskin Cree Nation, and we were just sitting with him this morning before we left, and we were talking about my relative Chuasis, and he was an old man that we were related to that was at the battle, well, at the massacre of Frog Lake, and that's our relative. And I remember one story my dad iterated to me from a very young age, right through high school and into my young adulthood, was that at the time of the battle, or not the, we can't call it a battle or a massacre. We have to call it an incident, because it was the stories that were published about us that made it a massacre. But really, what it is it was about feeding people. And so the story was that we had some chiefs that go up to the priests and ask for food for our starving people. we had kids that were eating moccasins, and those were a part of the suffering that we were going through. And when they asked for some of the rations and the foods, that we were denied. And so our chiefs, and I'm giving you the short form of the story, the chiefs said, "Well, we'll come back, and if you don't change your answer, we're gonna take it, and we'll probably kill you." And so the next day they shot the priest underneath the eye, right here. And our people went in and ate, and I know our people were just loving the pickles that they found. And there's many books written on it, and there's many of our relatives that were there, but Chuesis is one of the ones I'll talk about.
Roasting on
Yeah,
coal.
his name's Roasting on the Coals, and today you'll hear the last name Roasting. It comes from that, and those are our relatives that helped raise not only my father Victor and my dad's dad Victor, um, and John Kanowatch. That those were all the old men that were part of that. And like my mom said, that was only about 4 generations ago. So that was my dad's great grandfather. These stories are really fresh in us, and these are more recent events than not. And my dad shared a lot of that history with me, and wrote it down before we came. So that's on my Cree side. I'm a little child. And actually our last name is a misnomer from the French nuns. It was Nanika Oasis, which means swift child. So we have a lot of heirs, to set the record straight with the Canadian government and Alberta government when it comes to properly identifying who we are and how we identify ourselves, not having a third party come in and tell us who we are. So that's a bit about myself, and my lineage of who I am. And I just want to thank everyone for listening to that. Hi, hi.
Hi to you both. Thank you so much. I love to hear these stories, uh, Patricia, of our lineage, and reminding us to learn those traditions, to learn those stories, because we need to pass them along. Like you said, you're teaching Josh all of this, and he hears them all the time. And so it was interesting to me when he said that you were going to join us, because I thought, oh, like maybe there was, like something that he didn't know, or that there was more to the story. But I see he just wanted the pro to get in there and tell that story.
We validate each other. When you
Yes.
play along, you validate who you're being, who you are. And when you name somebody, but when you bring somebody, it's even better.
Yes. Yeah, that was so thank you so much, Josh, for thinking of that, because this is so special. I did want to ask a quick question, Josh. You were talking about your Cree side and your father, and could you want to share a little more about what do you know more about the history of the your ancestors at the Frog Lake Massacre? Because as you know, that is neighbors for me. That is right
Yeah.
next door for
So
Fishing Lake.
yeah, and it's good to see this is the relationality that's good. So after the battle, our people fled just like the Lakota did after the Battle of Little Bighorn, because they wanted to finish us off. So we took off to my ancestors took off to Rocky Boy. And if you ever go to Rocky Boy, and I just posted a picture on my Instagram of me in my outfit when I was about 4 years old in the 80s, 1980, what?
87, I think.
87, right before Black Friday, that big tornado that happened here in Edmonton. Um, you know, if you ever want to go hear Cree speaking Americans, they live in Rocky Boy, and those are our relatives where we fled, and a pocket of them, and there's families down there like the Windy Boy family,
Standing Rock.
yeah, all of those families that live down there that are part of our lineage, and we came back up to the calving grounds in the Wood Mountain.
You came up through the eastern part of Saskatchewan. What is Saskatchewan? Or eastern part of Alberta and western Saskatchewan, because in southern Alberta there's a common buffalo jump that used by Cree, the Sioux people, the Blackfeet. And if you go to that little valley, there's a huge rock that's indented concave, and that's where the buffalo jump occurred, and that's where the women must have pounded meat. And that rock is so big you can't move it, but it still exists there. And when I went there, my husband and I were shown that place by a relative. Our relative owns the land in Brooks. So he said, here must be Cree people walking through, because my husband was telling him the story about the walk home. And so when we went to that rock, oh, it was so moving. That rock is so beautiful. I try to get people to come and look at it, even the Blackfeet, the Bloods. And I still haven't up to today, but I want everybody to go celebrate that as a historic site. And my cousin owns the land, and he's hanging on to it to someday mark it as the trail home. It was like a trail of tears. We're starving. We're coming back to Canada.
Yeah, and so for the Cree, it really comes down to the origin of Musquatchie, which started with bobtail. And bobtail was in and out of the reserve that we call today Montana. And the reason why we call it Montana's reserve is because we kept on going back and forth from Montana. And the government of Canada was going to take that reserve away, and we actually had to fight for it back. And then it birthed from the brothers from Bobtail, Samson, Ermineskin, and eventually Muddy Bull's son came with Louis Bull and took a portion of Ermineskin's land. And so those stories, of our conflict and triumph, but how we move across all these designated borders that have come with the colonization of this land. We didn't really see the land the same way as our treaty partners see it, and so that's where we come from on the Cree side. So we have a lot of warriors in our family, a lot of people that stood up to do the right thing for our people at the time, and I carry that with me in my work at the university, because I know, I come from a long line of protectors, and I feel like I have to protect my people, especially here at the university. And it's a blessing to be called to come do this work and help out as an escapueo in our community here. So, thank you.
Especially the history in the stories, like this recent story. I know Frog Lake from having been raised and growing up in Lac La Biche, but had never heard of the hunger and the moving to Montana and coming back. So this is a huge change in the ways that I will now tell the story of the incident. And it aligns with the story that I had heard in my family. Michelle, please go ahead.
Thanks, Florence. Yeah, that's like Florence just said. I passed by. There's a monument for the Frog Lake Massacre on the way from Frog Lake into Fishing Lake, and I pass it every single time that I go home. And now I'll look at it a little differently, I think. Just this little bit of extra information, right? That is, like you said, passed orally, and it's not something that they are going to put on a little placard, next to a little monument, because that's not the narrative that they want to share. So, Thank you so much for sharing that. I just wanted to check in with you, Josh, because we did talk about some of your cultural practices and everything. And when we air this episode, it will be springtime, and I just wanted to check in with you about some of the cultural practices that we talked about in our last chat, and some of the things that are going to be happening for you this spring.
Oh yeah, the singing moon. That's what it's called in Cree. I was talking to my dad this morning about that. It's called the singing moon when the frogs and the birds were singing. Because Cree is very descriptive. It's no joke, no guff, just straight about what we see and how we hear it. And so in that time, and I'll speak, and I'll let my mom speak too, because she has a perspective that I think is valuable for Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota people to understand as well as our viewers, our listeners. Um, we usually burn grass, and grass is a way of us being stewards of the land in where we live. Why? Because it's about renewal. It's about starting fresh and burning all the foliage that's built up underneath so the animals could come. And it wasn't wanton burning. It was more or less just burning to create pathways and meadows for animals to come replenish and keep the hunting grounds clean and keeping the animals around. And also it was made for passage. So in the April months, while there's a little bit of snow on the ground, it was acceptable to burn. And my father always burned in the spring, and I never knew why until I started coming to the U of A here and researching. There's a wonderful documentary you can find on YouTube from one of our anthropologists, Gaias, in the 70s, that did a movie called The Fires of Spring. So make sure you check that out on YouTube, The Fires of Spring. And it talks with the Northern Cree and Dene about the practices of burning and why they do it up north and how it was outlawed from the Alberta government. And then they warned those Dene elders were looking right into the camera and they said, this will cause catastrophic fires. And this is a message from the 70s. And today we see these catastrophic fires and people don't know what to think about. And I think it's because it has to do with the erasure of our culture and the non-acknowledgement of our practices with the land. And so the spring burning is a part of that renewal that we just do. So if you ever get that itch to smell grass smoke, it's because it's in your lineage to do it. So I'll allow my mom to speak on the issue too from a Lakota perspective.
You see, our ways of knowing and ways of being, ways of knowing is not written. We still do things without, and Josh just said our dad used to burn fires and he didn't know why. My husband never taught him, we'd like word for word, we'd burn fires. He just did it when Josh was real little, so Josh knew he had to sit on the rock outside and watch dad. And we'd build up, because also that if we didn't burn all that built up old hay, wild hay, it would burn our house down one day. So Marvin kept it clear. So ways of being is you watch, you use all your senses, and that's how our whole body's participating and understanding how to be Cree, how to be Lakota. We watch our grandmothers, so we were never distracted like today. Today you're looking at your phone and while grandma's trying to talk. But we'd had purpose for everything, and I always liked it. I came to Cree country, and they're always smoking hide, and that to me that was the hardest smell to get used to. Why? Because we have no trees where I come from. We don't have trees to be burning and smoking. The women, they indoctrinated me into being a Cree woman. About 10 elders took me when I turned 40 and they said, it's time. And I said, what do you mean it's time? Well, it's time to be a Cree woman. So they took me to the then college, the old campus, and they talked to me for 4 days and 4 nights, from childbirth, creation to childbirth to death. And I could not write any of it down. I had to remember, I'd go home and cry every night and pray and smudge and cry, because here's 8 to 10 old ladies telling me how to be Cree. Why did you pick me? I asked. They said, because you're the one that listens well. And I didn't even know I listened. I thought I did more talking. But anyway, so we all geographically are placed in different places. So our life ways are all different. So again, when we had fires, but we had to be very careful because the vast prairies from the Grand Teton Mountains, and the Teton Mountains are Teton, after our people. The mountains to the Great Lakes, a fire didn't have to stop once we set one. So we're very careful on what we do. And so there had to be more, but then there's also the natural elements like the thunder and the lightning that would visit the plains and they would start fires. So that's just the way it is. We all live different in different regions, and I come to understand the Cree way through the ladies, the women that taught me. And then my husband tells me history day and night, nonstop, and old Cree words. I'm probably the most fluent old Cree speaker. But I learn a third language now, third language acquisition for memory, prevention of memory loss. So I listen to my husband's language and I listen to his language. And so, know that your region will never do the same things as Musqueam's Cree, because up north there's even dialects, reserved dialects of language that reference different things, and up north it's different. So we're all different, but we're all the same at the same time. We all share oral history, we all share creation stories. Every one of us has a creation story. We all have a Wisakajak, our teacher, a spirit teacher like Wisakajak, but mine is called Oktomi. And so if you go through every tribe in this North America, they all have a teacher, every tribe. So that's how it was mysteriously brought to us from the Creator, that we all have a common teacher that teaches our values and teaches us how to laugh and tricks us and all of that.
Yeah, and Gaias, when the women were more social than men. Men were hunters, and they were more in an area where you would hunt, a familiar area, but the women were travelers. So they became more social, but it was an expectation of learning your husband's ways. And so when you married, you would have to learn your husband's ways, and my mom's simply just following that. I know today there's a lot of feminism, and uh only daughters are some only daughters are still retaining their identity because of colonization, and there's certain situations where if they adopt their husband's way, who could be Washichu or Munyao, they might just be absorbed into the body of the I guess modern mainstream culture and become lose their identity of their indigeneity. So there's understandable situations where there's exceptions to the rule, but traditionally, if you married someone from a different tribe, you learn their ways. There was an expectation to become to make that tribe stronger, fresh blood, and you would learn that way. So my mom's simply following that. My wife does the same, retaining her identity as an Ojibwe, Anishinaabe person, still learning Cree, a lot of Cree values. So it still goes on today, but you'll see that there's always exceptions to the rule.
So Elder Joe Roan, he now passed, from Pigeon Lake. When I first married, he came to welcome me, and he said, I'm glad you chose to come to the Cree people. We need fresh blood. We can't keep marrying within our own tribe because, he said there's health consequences. It'll affect your memory. Mom Denachigan. And so they knew about inbreeding. But see, the reserve life created that, for us, that created, horrible things. But aside from that, I chose to follow the Cree. I'm very strong Lakota, Dakota. I'm even ethnocentric at times. Just kidding. But anyway, he said, the spirit of the Cree people has to remain strong. So you chose either to join us or the spirit will be shaken, like mixed up. So I chose to follow the Cree way. I didn't talk about my tribe for the longest time. I teach university. I get up and I talk in Cree to my students. And on the last day of class, I tell them, hey, I'm not Cree. I'm Lakota. I'm Sioux person. And they tell me, Mrs. Littlechild, you've been here since I was born. I didn't even know that. So I teach them Cree to use their Cree words in my class so that they will be never embarrassed to use their Cree words. Always incorporate your Cree where you can so that the spirit of the language comes into you. The spirit of your ancestors come and walk with you through what you're doing. And that's the way I carried myself in Musquechief, because that old man told me, you brought fresh blood, but our spirit is getting mixed up because all the people, different tribes were coming in. So I chose to follow the Cree way. And my husband told me, if you ever go home to South Dakota, I'm coming with you anyway. So I'm going to take him if I ever go. So that's how strong we are as a couple. We made a commitment. And that's just the way it is.
Exactly. I want to honor and thank you both for being a part of the community. I'm looking forward to being able to release this episode. In Cree, I guess, is it Tapwewin, Hi Hi, and Masicho? Michelle?
Oh, I just wanted to. I was going to share a little story. You're talking about these. When you're a couple and you follow your husband's ways. So my grandfather on my dad's side was Métis, but my grandmother on my dad's side is Treaty. She's from Frog Lake First Nation. And so after, I think I was about 11 or 12, I heard my dad and my grandma having a conversation. My cookum, and she was telling him, Find me a Métis sash. I want a sash." And my dad made a comment. "Well, you don't need a sash. You're treaty. You don't need a sash." And they laughed about that. And I don't know, it was maybe a couple of days later, my dad went to my cookum and said, "I need you to make me a ribbon shirt. I want to have a ribbon shirt." And she said, "Oh, you don't need a ribbon shirt. You got a sash. You're Métis." So it's just, like my Métis grandfather and my treaty grandmother, and just the way that they raised their kids, like they had to, it was mixed, and they 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 went back and forth, and my cookum lost her status when she married my Métis grandfather, and was able to get it back many years later when that decision was reversed in the government. But yeah, she was a treaty woman. She was a Frog Lake First Nations member, and she lost that status when she married a Métis man. And she moved to the settlement to be with him and raise the family and everything. So the fact that she was able to get her status back, I think, meant a lot to her, because yeah, she had just moved to the settlement and became a wife and a mother there, right? So to get that status back, I think, meant a lot to her, and meant a lot to her kids too, because they could also, if they wanted to, could apply to be members of Frog Lake First Nation as well. So, but yeah, that story of saying you move and you do what the husband does. So I was like, oh, that's what my Cookum Edna had to do. She moved off reserve to live on the settlement.
Before we go, I just want to make comment that the book that we're referencing today is They Never Surrendered, the Lakota Sioux band that stayed in Canada, the fourth edition revised by Ron Papandra. Is that it? Yeah. And I think it was published in when was it first published? In the 80s? Anyways, that's the book that we're referring to today. So if you want a copy, I'm sure you could get it online for your reference to research or want to learn more about that story. It's written down, so it'll always be there for everyone to know.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you, Patricia. Kyle, any final words? And then we'll turn it over to Josh and Patricia to close off.
Just noting how much past informs present here. Realizing, you know, Josh, with your many mixed linealogical identities, how that informs even your not just work, but your way of being, your way of showing up, your way of being present. You know, like with Michelle, like with Florence, you know, I'm also a person of mixed ancestries, you know, and but just looking deeper into your own history is even that role of, was it your grandpa who is a strategist and a consultant? Is that
That's my grandpa, yeah.
and so now here you are, Josh, as a strategist and a consultant in different departments in different ways. And so, you know, the people say apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, all that, but just noticing the generational kind of gifts that are carried forward in your own presence here. And then I did have one more. I know we're shy on time here. I did have Josh. I did a little bit of research, and you're a drummer. You're a drummer in several ways.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, as a very quick question is, what was your interest, your catalyst? What got you into drumming in the first place?
So when I was young, a man from Sisseton, South Dakota came to our house and gave me an Indian name. His name was late Gary Holy Buffalo. I mean Gary
Buffalo Bull.
uh
Holy gut Buffalo
no
Bull.
Gary
Holy Bull.
Holy Bull, right? And so my name that I was given is Holy Buffalo Boy. And I was given a pipe and I was given a drumstick and I was given songs and I got to sit in with the drum group and sing those songs from a very young age. So that's just a part of my identity is the drum. And you know, if you talk about you know, when Sitting Bull came up from South Dakota after the battle, he met with the Blackfeet and gave him the big drum. He gave him a bundle, a scepter, uh, the lance, the helmet, and then the gun.
The long headdress.
Yeah, he also gave him the long headdress, wives, names like Red Crow. Those names are still there in that area. So as a part of my identity, that's a part of who we are as a people. And so for drumming, you know, singing and sitting with drum groups that would come from South Dakota, my mom always encouraged me to sit down with those drum groups like the Boys when they would come up to Treaty 6 from South Dakota. I would go sing with them. And then, you know, being a part of who I am in mainstream culture too, I always like drumming as well. So I started playing in rock and roll punk bands when I was in grade 9, and I even spent 5 years with a Scottish pipe band learning how to snare drum, and I competed as the only First Nations person ever at the Canmore Highland Games to compete in snare drumming, and we won. And you know, I just always had an interest in music. I studied jazz with Tyler Hornby, you know, and Played gigs all over Calgary with guys like John Gray, who used to play with who was that blind guy that was on those McDonald commercials? Ray Charles. Yeah, I used to play with Ray Charles, and used to play with this guy named Igor Yukolov. They were a blast. Yeah, and so music's always kind of been a part of my life, part of my identity, and so I just use that to express myself, whether it's in ceremony or for money at jazz gigs or stuff like that. Yeah.
I had I'm an AV tech, right? That's why I'm here joining today. And I did sound for Sled Island, which I noticed you were interested in.
Oh yeah, I love
Yeah,
Sled Up.
yeah. And so I did the Tubby Dog punk rock.
Oh,
It was like
that,
such a
my, my
chaotic.
my wife and our first date was at Tubby Dog. Oh man, it was the best.
Now look.
Yeah.
So Josh, we have to have a visit outside of this. We'll have to catch up sometime.
Yeah, for sure.
Any final words, Josh and Patricia? Again, thank you so much for being with us.
My final word is echoing from my uncle, my late uncle Kiskauk saying, and you know, if you're listening, just and you're learning about your identity as an Indigenous person, wherever you are. If you learn about your indigeneity when you're young, or you're just finding about it this week, I think the thing you would want to focus on is learning your history and learning your language. If you know your history of where you come from and your genealogy, that's really important. And more importantly, the history of your people and where you fit in with that. And then your language. We're in a space right now where we're revitalizing a lot of our language, and the survival of our language is really important. So I encourage you every day, akamemuk, huka, let's try, to make sure we try to use at least a few words of our language a day. At the end of my driveway, I put there's two signs that say Mio Kisakau on one post, and on the other post it says Akamemuk. And every day that it just subversively gets into my head that every day is a good day. It's a good day if you want it to be, and you got to keep trying. Don't give up and learn your language, learn your history. Akamemuk. Keep going. It's up to you to share these stories with your kids, with your relatives, and don't let it end with you. You be the one that carry it forward to your kids. So keep going, and thank you for your time. Hi Ikse.
Well, I'm going to tell the audience, it's not your fault if you don't know who you are. Take pity on yourself, because colonization was the greatest tool to wipe us out and to have us not remember who we are, where we came from. But we have the power today to recover and retain, and so we will do that. And like Josh said, language, and you can research many areas, but you have people my age that will tell you the way home. Learn from them.